This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's January 16th, 2026. On this day in 1794, when our city was still just a few years old and little more than a backwater village, a man named Bob Renfro got a license to open a tavern here. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Back in his day, people didn't just call Renfro Bob, or Robert, for that matter. He was Black Bob, for the color of his skin. And while he was certainly not the only black man here at the time, he is one of just a few early Nashvillians of African descent who we know much about. There's actually a relative wealth of information about his life, a lot for anyone of his time and place, not just for a black man. Historian Larry Michael Ellis found mention of him in 25 local records from the era. And we know his story because it's an unusual one. Now, normally I follow standard journalistic custom and call people by their last name after first mention. But sometimes when another person also has that name, things get complicated. So for this first part of his story, I'm going to call our subject by his first name so as not to confuse him with the family who enslaved him, the Renfros. Altogether, they were in the first group of settlers who came from the east side of the Appalachians to create communities here in Middle Tennessee. Specifically, Bob and the Renfros came here by flatboat on a river voyage led by John Donaldson. That was in 1780. The Renfros were part of a smaller contingent that peeled off from the main group right at the start, found what is now Clarksville. They had a rough go of it there, though. The patriarch of the family died, and that kicked off a complicated sequence of various legal wranglings to sort out the Renfro estate, including the human beings who were owned as property. For years, Bob's ownership sort of ping-ponged around between various people. In 1792, there's paperwork that shows two men simultaneously claiming him. It took several years for the court to sort out that dispute. Now, all of this back and forth brought Bob to Nashville, and in the midst of all the legal kerfuffle, he found an opportunity to take a little control of his own situation. And so in 1794, the court gave the okay for him to sell liquor and food. His establishment became known as Black Bob's Tavern. It was probably just south of the public square on 3rd Avenue. And you know what? Bob seems to have been really great at his job. A lot of the town's movers and shakers drank at his bar, and it seems like everyone liked him. They stuck up for him. At one point, a white man physically attacked Bob at the tavern, and his customers rallied to support him in the aftermath. The attacker was indicted by the Davidson County grand jury. That was incredibly significant. A white man held responsible for a crime against an enslaved man. That kind of thing rarely happened. Now, remember that dispute over who owned Bob? Well, about a year after Black Bob's Tavern opened, the court determined that a lawyer named Robert Searcy was Bob's legal master. We can't really know what the deal was between Searcy and Bob at the start. I mean, you see these accounts sometimes of situations where someone decided the person they held in slavery was skilled enough to bring in special revenue, so they started a business for the enslaved person to run, with all the income it generated going straight to the pocket of the master. That was kind of the situation the groundbreaking Tennessee whiskey distiller Uncle Nearest was in, making liquor for the benefit of the man who legally owned him. But sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes, there seemed to be an agreement that gave the enslaved person some degree of autonomy or a plan to use income from the business to buy their freedom. Now, where Black Bob's Tavern fell on that spectrum isn't totally clear from what I can see. It does seem that Searcy was getting some or all of the money, but after about 6 years, Searcy released Bob from his bondage. I cringe at using this terminology when we're talking about the price paid for a person, but Searcy said the revenue from the tavern had more than compensated him for his investment. But emancipation wasn't simple. At that time in Tennessee, the only way to make it legal was through an act of the state legislature. Thankfully for Bob, he didn't just have Searcy signing off on his freedom. He had all of those influential Nashvillians in his corner, too. They advocated for his emancipation. And sure enough, at the fourth session of the Tennessee General Assembly, a special act was passed to grant Nashville's beloved bar owner his legal freedom and full citizenship. And from that point on, he wasn't just Black Bob. He was legally Robert Renfro. And yes, I'll call him by his last name from here on out. He had well and truly made Renfro his own, after all. After his emancipation, Renfro decided to upgrade. He bought his own land on what we now call 2nd Avenue, and on that he built a new tavern with a more upscale name, the House of Entertainment. It gets mentioned here and there in surviving letters and journals from various Nashvillians. It had a reputation as being never disorderly, which was actually pretty high praise for a drinking establishment back then. Legal records show that he ended up in several lawsuits over the years. The all-white juries repeatedly found in his favor. Again, this was utterly remarkable for the time. In those early years, the city didn't keep official death records, so there is no paperwork to indicate when Robert Renfro died. Nashville's first Black business owner shows up in the legal records for the last time in 1816, and he's not listed in the 1820 census. In just a few minutes, a very different kind of Nashville business, a campus devoted to helping musicians get massive tours ready. That's coming up after the newscast.
Are you proud to listen to Nashville Public Radio? You should be, and here's one reason. The local journalism you depend on, it truly is as good as it gets in the world of public radio. WPLN and WNXP stories have recently won regional and national honors for our music journalism, education reporting, the deep interviewing on This Is Nashville, and our in-depth podcasts. When you tune in, you're hearing your neighbors, and they're some of the best journalists in the nation.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville's Kurdish community is calling on the United States to support its allies in Syria following the outbreak of violence between Kurdish and Syrian government forces. WPLN's Rose Gilbert has the story.
More than 150,000 people have been forced to flee Kurdish areas in the Syrian city of Aleppo following violent clashes between Kurdish forces and the new Syrian government. At least 43 civilians have been killed. The Kurdish fighters being forced out of Aleppo are the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, which have been the United States' main partner in the fight against ISIS. And here in Middle Tennessee, the Kurdish community is calling on the U.S. government to support their allies.
Because the U.S. foreign policy is directly involved in the conflict right now.
That's Mehmet Ayaz, a local community advocate.
President Trump openly praised Mr. Shara, who is the president of Syria right now, who was ex-member of Al-Qaeda, which was, attacked the United States, but then he's the leader of Syria right now. But also United States supported the Kurds against ISIS.
In other words, America has, at one time or another, backed both sides of this conflict. Ayaz spoke to me from Washington, D.C., where he plans to attend a protest at the White House in support of Syrian Kurds. Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
At least 2 protests will take place tomorrow here in Tennessee, one in downtown Nashville and another in Knoxville. Tennessee is unveiling immigration legislation developed in partnership with the White House to further President Trump's mass deportation efforts. WPLN's Mariana Bacallao reports on what we know so far.
Tennessee is a pilot state for the legislative package, which, among other things, would make it a requirement for all local law enforcement in the state to partner with ICE under the 287G program. House Speaker Cameron Sexton says the package would also require someone to prove their immigration status if they want to apply for benefits, certain jobs, or to buy a car.
And we're not spending taxpayer dollars on you unless you're in jail.
Lisa Sherman Luna from the Immigration and Refugee Rights Coalition says some of the policies won't change that much.
I mean, immigrant families already face so many barriers in a place like Tennessee over the last few decades. So many laws have been passed that make life harder.
And some of the policies may be preempted by federal law, which limits what states legislate around immigration, since it's a federal issue. Even if, in this case, the federal government is behind Tennessee. Mariana Bacallao, WPLN News.
Congressman John Rose is trying to set himself apart from his fellow Republican, Senator Marsha Blackburn, in the race for governor this year. Blackburn has notched up a double-digit polling lead. But this month, Rose boasted he's the only candidate to reject the 2020 presidential election results 5 years ago on January 6th. In a post with the words J6 Objector, Rose says he's still proud of that stance. It's not clear if that could draw support for Rose from President Trump over Blackburn. Rose's Facebook post has drawn more than 600 likes and some 4,000 laughing emojis. Tennessee could face a growing shortfall of family doctors, psychiatrists, and internal medicine specialists over the next decade. That's according to a study from the Tennessee Hospital Association. It says the state's demand for physicians will grow some 10% by 2035, driven in part by the aging population. But unless something big changes, the number of physicians will grow by just 3%. That means Tennessee could be short by almost 4,000 doctors, particularly in high-need specialties and underserved communities. The research from THA also says that while cities like Nashville, Knoxville, and Memphis have plenty of doctors by national standards, rural counties face severe shortages. 52 counties have 0 psychiatrists at all. And one other complication is a looming wave of retirements. Many ophthalmologists, urologists, and psychiatrists are over 65. As they age out of the workforce, some of the state's shortages could get worse. A charity providing food to Nashvillians in need cut the ribbon on a second, much larger location this week. People who are referred to the store are able to shop for groceries just like they would in any regular retail setting. However, the groceries at the store are free of charge. The idea is to allow people more choice than is sometimes available with other forms of assistance and to actively protect recipients' dignity. The store first opened on 12th Avenue South at the start of the pandemic. The new location on the TriStar Centennial Hospital campus is 3 times larger and strategically located to help people who the hospital staff identify as qualifying for help. Founders Brad and Kimberly Williams-Paisley say the entire operation is funded through donations. At the opening ceremony, they specifically thanked Taylor Swift for helping to fund the expansion. Tennessee is reportedly the 3rd most dangerous state to drive in. Australian car insurance company iSelect analyzed car crash data from several nations. In the U.S., it looked at nearly 130,000 fatal crashes across the country over a 5-year period. Tennessee recorded more than 5,800 fatal crashes, and interstates, not state highways, are the deadliest roadways here. Mississippi is the number 1 most dangerous state to drive in, followed by Texas. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Big concerts like Taylor Swift's Eras Tour require precise choreography, gargantuan sets, pillars of fire, and lots of practice. Nashville has long had rehearsal spaces, but a new 55-acre rehearsal campus called Rock Nashville just opened in Whites Creek. It has the capacity to handle concerts like the Eras Tour and seeks to solidify Nashville as America's hub for music and touring. Music reporter Justin Barney has the story.
Fire cannons shot off indoors at the Rock Nashville opening on Tuesday.
Kendall is going to give us the honor of cutting our ribbon.
Nashville is really evolving from just the place of home of country music, really, to the home of live entertainment.
That's Rock Nashville CEO Andrea Shirk.
We've built 610,000 square feet with 15 studios, ranging from small studios to support local regional acts, all the way up to our largest studio, 95-foot tall building, and the ability to host stadium and arena level shows.
This story is about a transformative rehearsal space, but it's also a story about how Nashville's big players are getting bigger and navigating new Nashville hurdles along the way. Nashville already had a large and beloved rehearsal space, Soundcheck. Funded by Glenn Fry of the Eagles, it opened in 1993 in a nondescript loading dock-looking building off the Cumberland River. Kenny Chesney was one of the first clients. Vince Gill got locker number 1. Paul McCartney famously said that he came to Nashville for the 3 R's: riding, relating, and rehearsing. Soundcheck became the biggest rehearsal space in the Southeast, and a favorite for artists like Hozier. He spent so much time in Nashville that there was speculation that he lived here, a rumor that I gladly entertained. Do you live here?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't live here. But I have spent more time in this city than most American cities in the last year. I spend a lot of time rehearsing here.
Soundcheck was big, but they had big competitors. The biggest being Rock Lidditz, an enormous 150-acre rehearsal campus in the tiny town of Lidditz, Pennsylvania. There, two brothers realized that touring was more than just a wall of amps, and artists were needing a giant space to rehearse with screens, trapeze wires, and pyrotechnics. Rock Lidditz is where Taylor Swift rehearsed the Eras tour. Soundcheck wasn't quite at that level. And then a challenge came out of left field. Oracle came to town. They bought the land that Soundcheck sat on. That was hard on owner Ben Jumper, who I talked to at the Rock Nashville opening.
We leased the facility, and Oracle bought everything on that riverfront. And we had to vacate. I didn't like being pushed out.
But Jumper hoped that the two could work together. He made a plan.
We thought we might could negotiate where we build this down there and then be a part of it.
He took it to the top, CEO of Oracle, Larry Ellison.
But Mr. Ellison wasn't having it.
But Soundcheck found another way. They teamed up with Rock Lidditz, and they created Rock Nashville. Rock Nashville combines the two companies and a lot more. The collaboration is really the innovative thing about Rock Nashville. 47 other businesses have offices in Rock Nashville. You got Yamaha keyboards, JBL speakers, Shure microphones. It's everything that a touring band could think of, and then a little bit more. They even have a barber.
This will draw worldwide talent. And that's something that I don't think we ever really focused on.
Rock Nashville is part of an important ecosystem for physical music. When they moved out to Whites Creek, it opened up a lane for smaller touring companies. JPAC, who specializes in music storage for musicians, opened up in Berry Hill. Co-owner Andy Sheridan said that there's so much work happening that musicians needed a place that was closer to Music Row.
For the people that are doing a lot of back and forth, that are running around town, that are, doing this and that, just being close is super, super convenient.
Music is so digital now. Musicians make it on a laptop, you listen to it on your phone. But so many of the things that we don't even think about are still analog. And many of those businesses are building Nashville's future as the home of live music. And it's big business. The price of the 95-foot studio at Rock Nashville is $12,000 a day. Storage at JPAC, considerably less. Proximity and location are still important in music. And these are part of the ever-growing businesses that are making music work in Nashville.
If you're Coldplay or some big band, it's like you can't practice in your mom's basement. You know? I mean, you could probably be sick, but you need a place to go.
For Nashville Public Radio, I'm Justin Barney.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nash Villager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.